Hello, I am Tamisha, the founder and CEO of FOG, For Our Grieving. As Black Americans, we are sandwiched in between the public health threat of COVID-19 and the terrible injustices of racism, injustice, and police brutality. We are trapped. We are trapped in a double pandemic, hoping to find a cure for them both. This evening, I am here with my panel of wonderful people. We have Constance Thomas, Lauren Thomas, Jacob Brown, Dr. Clyde Bayberry, and David Calhoun, and Con Davison, who is our moderator. Con, I'm going to turn it over to you. For you who are watching it live on Facebook, if you have any questions or comments, I'll be on there trying to get your questions and tell them what those questions are. Con, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tamisha. For the panel, I guess just to dive right into things and to set a good tone, could everybody start just by sharing what would you, name your most impactful experience as to do with racism? Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I guess I can go first. I think to date, my most impactful was working for a market research company and advancing through the ranks. And I posted record profits for this company. This company had 53 offices. They had been around for 30-something years. I became the first Black manager they had back. That was in the late 90s. But it was interesting that I had to be super duper great to be considered average for them. But I exceeded all and broke their records. And then they tried to make it look like, well, okay. But they gave me this shot and I became the manager of a multi-level facility. But it took that. I would have never gotten that if I didn't far exceed their expectations for them to treat me like I'm normal.
Lauren?
Yeah, so my answer to that will be a little bit different. The most impactful experience with racism for me has always been more systemic. It's always been more of just the way the world has moved around me, and the way that I've had to navigate through that, especially when it does come to the health industry, the healthcare industry, giving birth to my children. Once I was, one child I was single, two I was married, and just the way that the healthcare industry is just not set up to love on Black women in general. It is not set up for us to succeed in a healthy, viable way. Just from everything from your prenatal visits to the actual act of giving birth and everything that happens after that, to how they care for you and your children. My experience is different from the experiences that I know white women have had. It's a whole industry around that. It wasn't just like, oh, and then this nurse said this or the doctor did this. It was the entire process of being a birth giver in that whole 10 months, 3 times of doing it.
I guess let me go ahead and chime in there, because Lauren, I was like trying to think, I'm like, how often have we really dealt with issues, right? The first one, actually, I think about when we were in high school, Lauren and Tamisha, and it was a forensics tournament. And I remember we were out at the mall. We were at a store. I don't get if you guys remember. We were in a store and these white people were following us. And at this time, our teacher is white. And we're like, I think they're following us. And they were just like following us every moment, trying to see if we're going to do something. And one of the young men on our team spoke up and it was like, oh no, I was just trying to see. And then our teacher spoke up. So like, that's the first time when I really knew one of the times that was going on. Other times when I was younger, I grew up in Grandma Rosedale. So at that time in the 80s and the 90s, it was still very diverse. And there was this one girl, her grandmother wouldn't let us come in her house, like at all. She was just like, and girl, little white girl, we playing outside. She's like, yo, y'all want to come inside? Come see my cats. And then you heard her grandmother say, they can't come inside. They're not welcome. And it was just like, whoa. So you have that moment. Like, as I'm talking, I'll remember that. But children, my first child, I'm a mother of 4 boys. My oldest son, I ended up having a seizure while I was pregnant with him. Did not know I had a seizure in my sleep. The next day, like a whole day went past. Then we eventually get to the hospital. The resident at that time, if he was a resident or attending, I don't know which one, but he said, I had a busted blood vessel in my eye. I had a black eye, but the black eye like cleared up a little bit, but I still had a major busted blood vessel in my eye. My tongue was messed up or whatever. And my mother was like, I think she had a seizure in her sleep. We need to check her out. And she's pregnant. And I was already having some heart issues. And the doctor at the time said, oh no, she just sneezed really hard. We don't need, that's why she just busted blood vessel in her eye. She just sneezed really hard. And I'm like, well, I've been going in and getting EKGs. Got sent home. If I didn't go to the hospital just the next day, wrong day for the appointment, but I'm like, I know I got an appointment. And then I said, well, let me just tell you what happened to me. I had a seizure, blah, 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 blah. That was the first child. My third child, I was like in active labor. I was not dilated. Cervix didn't move, but I am in pain. My husband's sitting next to me like, she needs help. What's going on? Can we do something? Oh no, her cervix didn't move. No, it's not time yet. They had me walking around. I should have not been walking around. I'm laying in the bed. Did not administer my epidural. Then when they finally wanted to give it to me, I couldn't move. I was in too much pain. My husband said, well, let me sign the papers for her. They said, oh no, she has to sign it. You can't sign it. He said, well, I'm her husband. Oh no, we can't do that. So like that, and my mother's a retired RN. So she was there. So she's trying to interject, but that birthing, that mother, that pregnancy, how Black women die because you make them wait forever to either deliver, administer drugs when they should, is a problem. Like that is very, very bad. That's why we have so many baby deaths and women dying because of a situation like that. So that mother thing happened to me twice. And that was my first and my third child. It was horrible.
David?
For me, what I can remember the most that impacted me the most was I was working at a restaurant, and I won't name the restaurant, but I had heard that they had never had African-American wait staff. And so a few of my friends, we took a chance and we applied and we actually got the job. And they told us from management, you all are the first Blacks to ever work in the front of the house. And for me, this is like 2010, 11. So I'm like, what? And sure enough, there was a party that was scheduled. It was in my section, got all set and ready to go, prepped everything, got ready. And when they walked in, I saw them talking to the management, and maybe 3 minutes later, they came over and was like, David, we're going to take you off of this party. And I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, we're not going to let you serve this party, but we're going to move you outside and you're going to make extra money out here. And I'm like, no, what's up with the party? And sure enough, they put white serving staff for the party because they did not want to be served by African American. And I remember that. I'll never forget how that made me feel.
And just to share mine, 1995, I was at Sears out in Novi, Michigan. I was returning a set of car audio speakers without the receipt. Older white gray-haired gentleman looks at me and said, was there anything wrong with them? I said, actually, they wouldn't fit. I bought the wrong size for my inside speakers. This is the 90s, sounds, kicker boxes, pull-out radios, etc. And the older white gentleman looks at me and says, these speakers didn't work because they were made for Soundgarden or Rolling Stones, not that crap you listen to. And then from then on, he says, we can't find your receipt. This may be a problem. And then he looks at his coworker and says, should I call security? And I'm 19. I grew up in the city, and in this very awkward way, growing up in Detroit, in so many ways, will shield you from racism because, other than teachers, I dealt with very, very, very few white people. And so, me being 19, this was the first time that I'm gathering that this guy sees me as a threat. Nobody's ever seen me as a threat in my entire life. And honestly, I didn't know how to diagnose that perception at the time. I had never been, I'm like, why he say he want to call security? Like what's up with, what I mean? It took me a while it took me a while for it to hit that I was in the middle of a racist situation. You know what I mean? I was like, man, this dude's like the racist people. Like my grandfather telling me about, like, this dude is for real racist. And so that really became a template in how I move forward, and not handling situations, but I guess as a way to see them coming, and they start coming fast and a lot more thereafter. So as through college and things like that. Tamisha, did you want to share?
I did. Did we miss Jacob? Jacob, did you have?
Yeah, I have something. Mine is kind of the gift that keeps on giving. For some of you, I also own my own business. I work as a director of creative director for a large RV dealership, but I also own my own web design and branding agency on the side. And I've had it for 15 years now. And early on, I had a client send me a check for a website that I built. And the check was for $3,500. And I deposited that check in my account. And I began, as soon as the check went through, I began spending the money. Well, the check bounced probably a week later because he just didn't have the money, but he wrote me a false check. So from then on, that was probably about 12 years ago. From then on, anytime a client gives me a check, I take it to their bank and I cash it to make sure that that money is there and I don't have to worry about a bounce check. Well, there lies the problem. Anytime that I go to a bank to cash a check, I don't care if it's for $100, I don't care if it's for $1,500 or even $3,000. I am looked at as a criminal first. I'm looked at as someone that is trying to cash a false or counterfeit check. George Floyd was called 911 on for a $20 bill that they said was counterfeit when he was trying to buy cigarettes. And he lost his life from a racist cop. And I have to think about that every single time I go to try to cash a check. And that's something I know a lot of other people don't have to think about. But that's something that I have to think about. And every time that I do cash a check, it takes anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes for them to call whoever wrote me the check, make sure it's right. They get my fingerprint. They get my mom's name. They want to make sure that I'm not cashing a counterfeit check. And that's something that I have to deal with, and that it burns. To be quite honest, I see myself as a pretty well put together man. I don't go to the bank looking crazy. I usually go to the bank, especially when I'm doing this, try to look well put together so that I'm not looked at that way. And it doesn't matter. Every single time, I'm still looked at as just another thug on the street that they're scared of. And I got to fear whether they're going to call the police on me or not every single time. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it's not something that happened one time. It's something that happened every single time.
And as for me, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, we knew when I went to the hospital after I talked to some doctors that we weren't going to keep her, that she was going to pass away. And I remember the doctor coming in, and I was 5.5, 6 months pregnant with my daughter, Sanaya. And the doctor came in, and he was just like, oh, I heard him talking to the nurse. He was like, oh, well, was she on drugs? What was she on? And he kept asking me questions like, well, did you smoke crack? Did you do this? And I was like, no, I had an infection. I have a short cervix, and this is the reason why. And he kept on just continuing to just demean me, to the point that it just was totally, it was too much for me to bear. I was already dealing with the loss of my daughter, and then for you to just assume crazy things to assume just because I was Black, just really hurt me. And the second thing was, as an event planner, I have a lot of events. And one time I was at a very prestigious venue that I won't say the name of, and it was an event that me and my business partner were throwing, and it cost a pretty big deal of money. And I remember that we came in, 2 African-American girls came in and said, hey, we got it, we want to do this event. And they kept saying, well, who are the owners? Who are the owners of this company? We were. And they couldn't believe it, to the point that they were like, well, I know we told you it was this amount of money. Now it's this amount of money. So when we went back to the bank and came back with that amount of money, they still were shocked. But it just hurt me so bad that I have to prove myself to people because of the color of my skin.
All powerful stories. And it's stories like all of these in which I like the thought process in which people say that basically growing up Black in America is its own form of PTSD work. Like, you know, part of reparations should be free counseling because, you know, all of us have grown up or lived lives in which we're working through mazes of racial booby traps daily or weekly or monthly or, you know, enough. Moving on to the next question as it relates to today's current events. We've been through police brutality for years. I mean, my grandfather has Big Four stories, for those familiar with the Big Four police in Detroit who were known for police brutality. Like that's what they did with the Big Four. And so as we've gone through Trayvon Martin and other murders over the years and recently, why do you think George Floyd, this particular one it seemed like it set off a different kind of fire, a different kind of energy. There's a different kind of chain reaction that went around the world. How do you all explain that? What are your thoughts on it?
I say it's the pandemic. Honestly, let's think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's due to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Every other murder has happened while regular life continued. I literally shared this through a work meeting we had recently. I said, I can't breathe is not the first time we heard this. Mm-hmm. This is not the first time we heard it. However, this is the first time where we're dealing with the pandemic. Everybody is at home. They're not supposed to be out. You're sitting down, you have your phones, you're on a tablet, all of these other things where now you're paying attention. How many recordings have we seen? How many 911 calls have we heard? The reason it spoke volumes is because we're in a pandemic and everybody's supposed to, for Michigan, stay home, stay safe, right? And other states. That's the only reason I think this has gotten traction, because businesses are already losing money. They're not making money right now. Some are closing, right? That is why it hit us harder than before. Because like I said, I can't breathe is not the first time we heard this. We heard it with Eric Garner. I think it's the pandemic.
Lauren?
Sorry. For me, I asked the same question. You know, why such a widespread support this time, right? This is like Constance said, this ain't the first time we heard I can't breathe. This ain't the first time we've seen a Black man killed unarmed on our television, our phone, our laptops, and watched them die. This ain't the first time. Like we've watched this for years. Mm-hmm. So I've had two questions, like why for me did this one hurt so bad? And also why for white people did this hurt so bad? Why is it different now? And for me, I look at it and I say, okay, not less than a month before I watched this, I literally watched 3 white men chase Ahmaud Arbery down the street. He tried to fight them off. They shoot him and watch him fall slowly to the ground. That destroyed my insides, watching that. And then less than a month later, we watched 8 minutes and 46 seconds of a man being choked on the ground, handcuffed, not moving, not resisting, just on the ground, and everybody in the world is watching this. and like Constance said, you can't go nowhere, so you ain't got no choice but to watch it, right? Everybody is literally watching it, and we watch that man call for his mama. We watch that man say, "I can't breathe." We watched him say, "Sir, please." He had the audacity in his last breaths to still call him sir. I can't breathe. And at that point, you cannot deny it. And I think at that point, everyone had to say, okay, I see what's going on. I can't lie and say that maybe it was this or maybe it was that. I gotta choose a side. And the side is right and wrong, period. Right and wrong. And it went from unconscious bias to literally conscious bias.
Mm-hmm.
If you are still going to be on the side saying anything other than that man was killed wrongfully and those police officers need to have justice thrown at them, then you just constantly, you don't care about Black people. And that is why Black lives matter. That is why everyone that I know is beating the drum. Black lives matter. Not all lives matter. Black lives matter, because we understand that those are the lives that are in danger, period. And for me, that's why I think it's different this time.
To go off of what both said, it was COVID-19 is a threat multiplier. So everything that was already wrong just got compounded, got multiplied and multiplied again. So the pandemic highlighted very early on the healthcare disparities in Black communities and poor communities. And it got talked about. The stuff we've been talking about for years, it's on CNN now. You know what I mean? People are like, hey, did you know Black people have a different healthcare system? You know, it's like, yeah, you know, so we're already talking about that. We're talking about underlying conditions, which things like asthma and lung cancers, which go to environmental racism. Because when you look at why does Detroit have such high childhood asthma rates? Because it also has incredibly toxic, poisonous air. Right? And you can look at that around many other urban cities. So when you have people who have higher chances of getting asthma, and now you have this illness, which is going to be exacerbated by that asthma and other issues. So people were paying attention to those things. Housing justice. People were paying attention. Suddenly, everybody needs a fair wage. Things that we've been talking about, right? Essential workers. It's like, you know what? The person who checks me out at Myers is an essential worker. Yes, they are. So we started, the culture had already started kind of listening a little bit more, right? And so then when you add that to the videos, when you add that to the fact that we're home watching the videos, then it's like, you know what? Black people really been saying something. You know what I mean? They really been, I kind of see they are treated a little bit differently. And then I absolutely have to add the fact that we talk and discuss the deaths and the murders that are videoed, but I have to mention the murder of Breonna Taylor. Mm-hmm. It is not on video, but we know she was murdered. If you look at the incident report, which the Louisville police came out with, which is utter trash. But when you look at all of the articles and everything that has come out in these past 3 months, guess what? The story of Breonna Taylor has not changed. The story that her family was telling literally 12 hours after she was murdered, there's no new evidence. There's no, oh, but she said this or she did that. You know why? Because they're liars and they're murderers, and it cannot. I just had to add that, you know, because we need those men, we need them brought to justice for real, the best justice that we can offer right now, because true justice would have been Breonna being able to celebrate her birthday last week. That would have been justice, but now we need to confront that part of it. And the juxtaposition of Ahmaud Arbery and of George Floyd did help to highlight this case of this woman who was murdered in the dark. So that and it's also highlighting the fact that, you know what, Black women are murdered by the police, not on video, but their lives still matter. So we need to that discussion going as well.
Yeah.
David.
I think enough is just enough. I mean, we have been watching, we have been waiting for a response. Like, we've been speaking, and it's like, okay, we are peacefully protesting all the way back to Trayvon Martin. And I mean, it's death after death. They're kicking in doors and shooting us in our homes. We're going for walks and jogging, and we're getting killed. And it's like everything, it just reached a climax. Like, it just popped. It was like, enough is enough. Like this man is on TV with a police officer having his neck pressed by his knee, and he's pleading for help. And it's like, it's unexplainable. You cannot justify that. You can't explain it. You can't explain the jogging and the shooting. You can't explain it. It just makes no sense. Breaking into somebody's home, nothing makes sense anymore. And the people have had enough. We've had enough. And when people begin to loot and riot, it's because they feel that they're not being heard. We have been speaking for a long time, and it's enough. Enough is enough, because who's next? How many more? Who's next and how many more? So I just think that it was enough. We reached a breaking point emotionally. I think with the COVID and everything, everybody was in this place like we've never been here before. What's going on? It's like, and even in the midst of being sheltered in, Black people are still getting killed. Enough is enough. That's how I see it. But and I'm not angry.
You're
Dr. Mayberry.
Yeah, you did sound pretty angry there, David. Anyway, I agree with everything that has been said. I would add, with the pandemic is also the fact of the employment rate being so high. You know, it's kind of easy to be out there late when you don't have to go to work in the morning. So you got a lot of that. But I want to also credit the millennials, because, man, they are out there and they are doing it. The thing that bothers me about all of it the most, and this is just something that's systemic as well, I hate election years when you have to vote for the lesser of two evils, like the candidates just are not. You know, and I don't know what angered me so much. I heard Biden speak on this and talk about systemic racism. And then he told a story like he usually does. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, it's too bad you wasn't vice president for 8 years, that you could have did something about this. You know, we are supposed to believe you about to do something now. And we know the other side ain't gonna touch it. It's like obvious. So he's our hope. And he's supposed to come in and do something different than in the 30 years he's been in Congress. You know, everybody that's looking at this, Nancy Pelosi and them, oh, they got a bill now. That's really nice. But y'all are career politicians. This problem didn't just start with George Floyd or anything of 2020. This has been going on and nothing has been done. And so without the rioting, without the destruction, without the threat of tearing something up, they wouldn't move. Mm-hmm. And so they can talk about tearing that stuff up, but that's what made them move and be more expedient with what they're doing. It's just sad that even amongst ourselves, when you have African Americans in positions that can change something, it still doesn't happen. And so, you know, there is a Black caucus in Congress. It's been for years. We're just now having legislation put up, and of course, the legislation doesn't have any teeth. Y'all saying we're going to outlaw chokeholds. You think they're not going to choke nobody? And what are you going to do if they do? Right. What's the penalty? I ain't heard a penalty yet. We're going to set the rule up. That's a violation. Yeah. And what are you going to do about it? Because once he chokes somebody out, what next? You know, so they don't go far enough. It just doesn't have any teeth. And so you look at these, and this is just to shut you up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're gonna throw some crumbs, which is what normally happens, and people get satisfied. And I really want to believe that this time is a little different. I mean, especially seeing more of our European brothers and sisters out there. I'm hoping that means that there's brought a much larger awareness of this. And I know just from my social media feed, I am seeing that, but I'm also seeing the usual suspects too. You know, I've had to do some purging on my sites for people who just, I can't believe. I had one woman that I've been knowing for years, and she put up a bunch of stuff about abortion. And I said, out of everything going on right now, I know you're Republican, but out of everything going on right now, you think abortion is the hot topic? She would not touch what's going on right now. Had nothing to say, but you wanted to talk about abortion. Okay, I guess. But that's where I see such a larger problem. I think that the solutions that they come up with just don't have enough teeth. They're crumbs, and I hope that we don't get fooled by that fact.
Clyde, you made a really good point about the abortion piece. A former church member of mine, she put a post up, and it was kind of towards, our faith leaders. But in her post, in the status, she said, okay, you guys, leaders, you talk about pro-life, pro-choice, don't do abortion, you're about pro-life. And she was like, you do realize that Black Lives Matter is about pro-life too, right? Absolutely. People are still dying. Mm-hmm. And when she said that, I was like, boom, like you can't be pro-life on this way, but then you're not going to be pro-life over here.
That's right.
People are still dying. They're being killed. You're like, babies are being killed, dying.
That's right.
Same thing. You're going to be pro-life over here. I'm going to need you to be pro-life over here. And when she made that statement, I said, whoa, absolutely. That hit a chord. And I was like, you touched on something that many people aren't thinking about. She touched on something. I said, I had to text her, said, baby, you just said something. You said a word, a serious word, and I'm happy you said it, because if you're going to be pro-life for all lives. That's right. And Black lives specifically.
And I think something else, just to slightly pivot the discussion, I think something else we, either we or people on the outside don't take into consideration is how much the toll every Black death weighs on us. Like, I'm 43, and I'm at the age where I grew up hearing the Emmett Till story when I was near an Emmett Till age. When Malice Green was murdered, Malice Green could have been an uncle or a father. You fast forward a little bit, Breonna Taylor could have been a sister, Trayvon Martin could have been my son at the time. So every death, every police brutality, every uncalled for unfortunate thing that happens to a young Black boy, young Black girl, it takes a piece of your soul. It takes a piece, and there's this trauma that comes with that. And when we look at, you all spoke on health in the African American community, and you take things like that extends to mental health as well. And so Absolutely. We're either afraid to go get help, or we don't have access to health. One or the other. Too many of us don't embrace it, or we just don't have the resources to go out and get it. And so that leads to the question of, how do we heal? And how do we continue to heal? And how do we heal when we keep going through shit, to be blunt? How do we heal? I'm one of those people, sometimes I have to tune out. Sometimes social media beats me down just a little bit too much. I can't see another video, another Black man dying at this moment. I feel irresponsible for tuning out, but I can't take it right now. You know what I mean? Everybody has ways of dealing with things. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this are, things that have happened, they had to tune out. It's like, okay, I'm being triggered. It's triggered something they went through as, when they got pulled over at 14 years old. They have a parent, a loved one that was murdered to police brutality. But there's a responsibility sometimes when you have to tune out. And so I just wanted your thoughts on that, on healing, on, a lot of us have that responsibility where we want to stay engaged, we want to speak out, want to support, but at the same time, every time we do, we get triggered, so we got to pull back a little bit, and that's a constant inner struggle we all have. Dr. Mayberry, can you start us off with this? Your thoughts on it?
Excellent question. And I feel exactly the same way that you do. I'm 10 years older than you are, and so I remember all of those. Malice Green, you put up Malice Green, that was back in the day. And those officers that convicted, surprisingly, it took forever, but they didn't do all their time, of course. Mm-hmm. But in counseling, what we do when someone brings a problem to counseling, normally it's something that's causing depression. But it's because they haven't dealt with it. It's still ongoing. It hasn't been satisfied, or the result they got didn't satisfy what they needed. So it causes mental anguish. And that's where they get the symptoms of depression. Literally, your body lets off endorphins. You are depressed. Our problem is this is not a thing or a person. In other words, if you came to me and you said, I'm having an issue with my business partner, ultimately, if we couldn't get past that issue, you'd have to dissolve that business and you and him just can't work together. If it was a place of business where you were working and it was causing that, you may just have to leave that place. Well, what do you do when it's a societal problem? Like you can live in any other 50 states, you are still going to get this. So when you talk about dealing with the post-traumatic stress of it, which is so difficult, if we knew for a fact that George Floyd was the last one, okay, healing can begin. But all of us and everybody watching this clearly knows, oh no, there'll be a lot more. And you know, when you look at how these, I mean, even now, I mean, I haven't seen anybody stop it, you know, as far as the police stop anything. I was just watching on the news, I guess did you guys see the story about the Amazon driver in Warren? And he's delivering packages. The neighbors try to come to his aid. He gets into it with the officer. And, you know, today they're actually charging this guy with a felony, which is just incredible. Like, are you serious? Because the officer wanted to see his ID. He said, no, I'm working. He asked him 11 times. 11 times he said no. Now he didn't grab him, put his hands on him. Now they wrestling. Now he on the ground being handcuffed. And it was because allegedly some complaints that the neighborhood had of the FedEx and postal workers, just parking and blocking and clogging the streets. That just sounded made up. It was very convenient and made up, but they were going to try to give this guy a felony for that. You know, this officer on a motorcycle this is in a residential street, just deliver packages. You know what he's doing. He's a black guy. So we got to stop him. And now we want his ID. What you want his ID for? What did he do? That, in any other case, is a ticket at the most. You're going to get a ticket and have to be, I'm going to ticket you for this. Not I'm going to arrest you. But like officer got mad. I'm going to tell you, the sad part, I kind of looked up, George Floyd's case made me do this. I was looking up officers, you know, how you become an officer. Most of these guys became officers because it was a better position than where they were. A lot of them were like dishwashers and used car salesmen and things like that. And particularly in George Floyd's case, that was the case. And so these guys, 19 weeks in the academy. You got $5,000, you can get 19 weeks in the academy and you can be an officer. 19 weeks is like one semester of college. And you expect them to handle the multiplicity of problems in our society? They're called for everything, and we bring a gun and a badge to everything. And so we look at this, and that's where the post-traumatic stress continues. We know it's going to happen again. When you got guys that have seen war, been in the war, and they come back with post-traumatic stress, they are always worried about, even though they know they're not at war, but a loud sound will trigger something. You know, and it just triggers it because that loud sound meant something back when they were in Iraq or wherever they were. That same thing will happen to us, and then it's ongoing. And what our system does, unfortunately, instead of helping us deal through the problem, they want to medicate, and that's what normally happens. But it is very difficult to follow traditional counseling because you have to get a lot more creative nowadays. But traditional counseling won't meet that gate because our problem is a societal problem. It's general and it's not specific. And every time, you're absolutely right, every time we see another one, devastation has set in. Breonna Taylor's story is so bad. And I mean, I hope that one doesn't die down, but you know, they showed the report that they filed. They said she had no injuries. The report actually said she has no injuries. She was shot 8 times. So all that is happening. See, again, a lot of lies. And, you know, we're so quick to say, well, all the cops aren't bad and it's all bad cops. But I keep hearing a bunch of lies from cops.
Right.
You know, George Floyd was resisting arrest. You know, Ahmaud Arbery was stealing. He was stealing in houses. Well, we got all these stories and nobody thinks, well, if we caught this officer in this lie, in this case, how many other cases, how many people are in jail right now or in prison right now Because it's top line. See, this thing just doesn't go deep enough for us. And it grieves me still today for the amount of people who are actually in prison and shouldn't.
Constance?
Whew. Clyde, you just said so much. You said you spoke on so many things. I don't know if Lauren, if you have made this comment one time, or if I heard somebody else or you shared it, but like that post-traumatic slavery stress syndrome. I heard that. And I remember like when I heard that title, that statement, when you think about that, how we've survived, we're running, you're looking behind your shoulder, is somebody going to come after you? We're already tense. We're already, having to have the talk. Like to understand, like people don't understand the talk, right? And I was on a webinar for work yesterday and we were talking about P&G and how they have the man that, they're looking at him going shopping, he's in the car, he do all this, but at the end of the thing, this man is a judge, like puts the robe on, he's a judge. And it's because the color of our skin and where people are taught to fear us. And for me, being a mom of 4 boys, my 16-year-old he's like 5'8" right now, right? He's just a little smaller than, shorter than my husband. He's 5'8". And we're like, when you go out in the street now, you are going to be looked at. It was a big black man. And big black who? Where? This kid? This skinny kid? We're like, no, you're looked at as big and black. That, just the thought of that, you grieve. When Trayvon was killed, my kids were still really little. And it was still like, he just went to the store. Like to the point where like, our kids don't, like they just start going to the store again by themselves. You weren't going to the store by yourself. You're grieving so much because it's just like, you're supposed to trust the people who are supposed to protect and serve, right? We were telling our boys when we had the talk, again, like I said, literally just a couple days ago. Remember Gang Squad? Remember it was like, yo, Gang Squad, they came, you was clearing out the spot. You was like, you ain't messing with Gang Squad. They show up, you like, yo, let's go. We know we skipping.
Hawaiian shirts. They always have on the Hawaiian shirts.
And it's like, and you just like knew. And then it's like, if they roughed you up, it was because you literally were doing something stupid, right? But we respected the Gang Squad because it's like, if they coming to touch you, it's a problem. Whereas now you have police officers are just touting their badges just because. Mike's brother-in-law a couple years ago was arrested. He was racially profiled, and they were searching in his car and they're saying all these things. And my niece and nephew at this time were really young. And my sister is looking out the door, like watching, like, what are you doing? What's happening? And they're like, where are the drugs? Where? I know you got drugs. He got drugs here. Stop resisting. And they already had him on ground. Right? And this is, Detroit had him on the ground. You take him to jail for what reason? There was no reason. Because he drove a nice car? Because he's in a city in one of the nice neighborhoods? Then they really knew, okay, he gotta be dealing drugs. They pull up his rap. He's a VP. And to know, here's my part, Clyde, to your point, these bad cops. The cops had already had multiple reports against them. So you were already after my ex-brother-in-law. Your rap was already shaky, homie. You were already wrong. People already had reports on you. And you still are on site. What I grieve and what bothers me the most, you all, is where are the cops that's holding your brother accountable, right? Because I ain't gonna say your sister because we ain't seen the sister cops, whatever. And I will say the one sister who like grabbed that dude, had the video and pushed him off and yelled him off like, you don't do that during a protest. I was like, whoever she is, somebody sent her some flowers because she's the only one doing all of this that you actually saw her holding somebody accountable. And my thing is this protection, but then you hear the chatter in the back anonymously that the ones that don't call out their brothers in blue, they're scared of being retaliated within the department. They're scared to open their mouths because now they're going to get attacked. That's messed up. Y'all supposed to be together. What is my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper? Let's hold each other accountable. Let's do this. And you can't even hold the person who's wrong. They got a gun to your face. You see the dude knee in his neck, in his neck, Eric Garner, the choke hold, and you just standing there. When is it like, you know what, stop, dog, like move, like stop, all right, chill out. Nobody's doing that. And I think that for me is the part that I'm grieving the most, because where is the accountability to your partner, to your brother in blue? What happened? When does that like break down and we now turn it to just being a human being and not this badge and a gun?
We got a whole nation of police, right? And all these police unions and all of that. I saw one like op-ed written by an officer so far. There's been no movement, no statement from the good police. There haven't. And when we, in terms of healing and in terms of moving forward, there really has to be a holistic look at when you close your eyes and think of a utopia. If you close your eyes and think of the bestest, safest place that's free, and when you really think about the things that make you safe, that make you feel safe, just that feeling in your belly where you feel safe, and at the same time where you feel free, you are not picturing a police officer. I don't know anybody who is like, when they're designing their utopia, and in their head, they're that section of heaven, and they're like, okay, this is where the jail is. This is where the police are. Because that's not how we build a utopia. That's not how we build the goodness, right? And so there's been all of this discussion now on, of course, prison abolition and defunding the police. That's work that I have been doing now for a while, and I've been an activist in those realms for years now. And it's like, it's exciting to see it as a hashtag. For me, I'm like, oh, we're really getting into this. And it does sound alarming, like, defund the police, who am I gonna call, da-da-da-da-da. And it is a process, right? But getting to that, going through that as a process, that is where freedom is, and that is where safety is, and that is where healing is. Because again, when it's not just the idea of being traumatized by the police, it's also the police state and the environment of which police are so prevalent. So when you would start addressing those things, when you start addressing poverty first and foremost, along with racism, those things, when you start really addressing those roots, then guess what starts going away? This need, this obsession for police, this obsession for putting people in cages for not paying a traffic ticket. Right? You can go to jail for a long time for going through a stop sign for a ticket that you can't pay. You didn't have insurance because you couldn't pay because it's illegally, ridiculously high here. And now you're in jail. You're a criminal because you are poor and you made a mistake driving. But that doesn't happen everywhere, and it does not happen to everyone. Right? The places that do exist in reality that people feel the safest, where they're leaving the door unlocked and all of that, they also don't have the police. Oh, here come the police, y'all. Just act normal. That doesn't happen. Those two things do not exist together. And that's the healing part. The healing is admitting that, and admitting that we have an obsession. We have an obsession and this thing in us that we feel that we need to be policed. Our neighbors need to be policed to act right. And it's layers to it, it's history to it. And once we face that head on, and when we really look, the idea of the police extending from slavery is not a myth. Somebody told me earlier that was a myth. And it's like, no. That is not a myth. They're slave catchers. The modern day police are just the slave catchers that our ancestors had to run away from. So it's like, you want to sign up to be a slave catcher so you don't have to be the slave. You know what I mean? But and at the other people who might have found a little bit of freedom or whatever are like, okay, we need these slave catchers to keep them on the plantation. It's like and it does go also to our obsession and our need of capitalism and our desire, the collective desire to be closer to white supremacy. All of those things, they're these big concepts that sometimes sound like, oh, here she go. You know what I mean? But when you really look at it, when you face it like head on, it's like, that's that thing. That's where these wounds are coming from. And that's why they're continuing to bleed, because we have not looked at it and said what it is, because the white people have not wanted us to say police are slave catchers, because it sounds so ugly, because it is. And we've had to, it's uncomfortable, and we've had to make so many people comfortable with our discomfort that we haven't just called it what it is. Police are slave catchers, and we're not going to heal. We're not going to get free and safe as long as we hold on to that as a concept.
Yeah.
Jacob?
So for me, when I think of this situation and these situations that have been happening, and trying to heal from it, I think, Clyde said it best. It's hard to heal when you know that the pain is going to come back, and you know it's not going to be the last time, right? It's kind of like a regular wound. You're never going to heal if you keep ripping the Band-Aid off. You've got to allow time for it to heal, but if that wound keeps getting dug into, it'll never heal. And that's what we continue to feel every single time we see another Black life lost unjustly. It's a deeper wound every single time. And like David said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And for me, when I try to heal, one thing I do is I try, and my mom always used to say, when you're hurting, you should try to help. When you're hurting, you should help someone. You should reach out to someone. You should do something for someone. And we, as a Black community, we all have those friends. We all have those people that we know that are struggling, that are continuing a generational curse just within themselves. And if we don't reach out to them, nobody's going to reach out to them, right? And they're hurting just as much as we are, and we might be them, right? And somebody reaches out to us. So one thing that I try to do is I try to reach out and help those that I know that are hurting probably even more so than I am. And that helps me heal a little bit. But I don't think we're ever going to fully heal until something changes.
David?
Whew. This is deep. This is good. Everybody is speaking well. Things that I was thinking about, the next person would say it. And so just encouraged by what's being said. But I'm a youth minister. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. And so I believe that God gives healing. I believe that healing comes when you find your voice, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to come together as a people and be united. And we're talking about these systems and things that were put in place. Remember, we were divided even in slavery. Mm-hmm. They pinned us against each other all the way back in slavery. We still have to defeat that mentality, because a house divided cannot stand. And we as a people, we're still divided. We have to come together and have one voice, like what Dr. Martin Luther King was doing. He was giving the people a voice, and they were all speaking and saying the same thing. And I believe that faith without works is dead. Okay, so once you get your voice, then you need to learn how to use it. We have to teach one another how to get these police officers out of their positions, how to get people out of seats in the council and in the government if they're not speaking for us. We have to teach our young people and even older alike to use your voice and make it heard. Because until we can fix the environment, there will be no real healing. Mm-hmm. So these people have to be moved. and the right people have to be put in place so that they represent the people. Because without assistance, it's not going to happen. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. Our Caucasian family, because they're not all bad, okay? Our Caucasian family, they have to speak up. They have to speak up. We can't always represent ourselves. You have to use your white privilege, and you have to use your voice and join your voice with ours so that healing can take place.
I like what you said, David, because part of what you said, and I always felt one of the things that irritated me is the perception nobody ever wanted to acknowledge. You know, I always felt part of the reason Black Lives Matter was disrespected from whites and those that didn't, because they couldn't get past the guys that were perceived different. You know, a group of old white hillbillies doing illegal stuff, they're some good old boys, but we're criminals. A group of college white kids that are partying, doing illegal stuff, or they're frat boys. Black kids doing the same thing, but we're criminals. You know, even our criminals are criminals, while white criminals are romanticized. We got Al Capone movies and Sammy the Bull, you know, or my great grandfather was a bootlegger, stories romanticized. You know, nobody wants to hear about my great grandfather was a loan shark, selling, you know, loaning money out for $10 on the dollar and selling marijuana. You know, they're all criminals. So the perception, we get this one-sided bad perception. And so what I started to notice a lot more in these last few weeks is a slight shift in that perception. And so that leads to the question is, with where we're at right now and what's going on, where do we go from here? Because we're all going to remember 2020 for a lot of reasons. But in this moment, in this energy right now, after these last few weeks, what has to happen next to make, because that leap, it seems like we've been stuck in this one spot for probably since the 70s, you know? So, you know, do we believe we're about to make that leap, and what has to happen for us to make it? Anybody can jump in on this.
I can pick up where I left off.
Go ahead,
if you don't mind. I believe that what we have to do right now is to remember this, and it's not that our lives don't matter. Our lives do matter, but our lives cannot matter if Black lives don't matter. You cannot say one without the other. We have to get to a place to where we are teaching our brothers and sisters that you are valuable, that your life matters, and that your voice is heard. And we have to show them how to use their voice. There's so many of us who are just ignorant, and I don't mean that in a bad way. When I say ignorant, I mean they don't know how. They don't know how to vote. They don't know who to contact when something goes wrong. It's so many of us who don't have a point of contact, that we just don't have it. And so we're stuck in this system. I believe that we, those who have it, have to speak up, stand up, and show the way. Be the lamp, be the light, and let's guide. Let's come up with programs to show people how to get things done. That's what we have to do now. Our voices have been heard. Now, what's the next step?
That's right.
Let's educate the people. That's where I'm at with this.
Well, I'm going to say a little thing, and David, I think you took what I was going to say, but the biggest thing for me is to educate. We can't let this moment pass and do nothing about it. I'm really big on, it's not just the moment, it is the movement. We like we said, from Emmett Till on down to Floyd, we have to remember. We have to keep it going. We have to teach. I'm a mother. So what broke me was my 6-year-old coming to me after seeing bits and pieces, because I wouldn't let her see it all. After seeing bits and pieces of what was on the TV, she said, "Mom, is Daddy coming home today? Mom, is Uncle Clyde gonna be okay?" It broke my heart, because what do I tell her? So instead of me teaching about race, Black and white, I unfortunately had to teach her about what's right and what's wrong. And so for that, I feel that if we continue to teach, if we continue to educate, if we remember and don't forget, then I think that right then is where we need to step up. Like David, what you said, educate. for me, I think that we should continue to support Black-owned businesses. I don't, and not just Black-owned business, but really right now, we need to be able to stand on that. We have all of the businesses that we need. And as African-American people, as Black people, we can do what we need to do with the money that we have. Put the money back in our community. Like we said, you know, it's a thing of poverty, but we have the money, but we don't spend it correctly. We want to spend it with our Black-owned businesses and allow those people to thrive and to learn and to do other things with that too. So I believe that it has to be a movement and not a moment.
I think also, Tamisha, I'm so happy you brought up the Black businesses, because it is. I mean, that's just one of those things. You come on, you know, and not just because we're in this capitalist society, right? So if we're going to be in this and participate in it, we can do those parts of it on our own terms, and we can think beyond that too. There are co-ops as well, and for people who want to start a business, I highly suggest, depending on the kind of business you're starting, start a co-op, start something together. That's a community, and that is village building. I also think, I tend to think in intersections, right? So nothing is ever one thing, right? We're the three of us Black women, so it's like those extra things. And then thinking about it in terms of disability justice, right? Because that's the people with disabilities are going to get hit harder. I talked about housing justice, environmental justice, and then we have to also, especially we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we cannot really I feel talk about that without talking about the LGBTQ community. The women who started Black Lives Matter as those three words together, we're talking about queer Black women who have, one of them I know is disabled. So we're talking about people with strikes against them. So like boom, 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 like those intersections are really hitting. Those buses are coming from all those different lanes. So we can't talk about that without really talking about how we deal with queer people in our lives and outside of our lives, because trans Black lives matter too. A trans man was murdered in Florida recently, and we have not heard enough about that. A trans woman was beaten recently by a group of Black men. We have to have those conversations. We have to look at it, because we can't, it's like, okay, yeah, we and it's not diverting to that, oh, what about Black on Black crime? No, because we're talking about things that are institutional. We're talking about things that are systemic, right? And we're talking about getting through the ugliness, right? So we have to think about those things. We have to look at it and call it out. And the other thing about moving forward and thinking in intersections, joy and grief live in an intersection together too, right? We laugh so hard we cry. And when we are at funerals, I have laughed harder at funerals than I have at any other place, right? Because that is how our bodies are built. That is how our spirits remain strong, right? So even during COVID and doing all these things, now we have this community on the internet where we get to create memes and laugh at Black Twitter and, you know, and share these things to get us through these moments. But those things, there are always some poignancy to them as well. You know, there's always something a little bit deeper than just a tweet or just a little cartoon, right? And so taking those moments and allowing them to flourish and to be bigger and looking our grief, right? That's what we're talking about, is pain and grief, right? So when we look at it, and we say, it's okay that I'm sad right now. This pain, I acknowledge it in myself. I acknowledge it in you. I acknowledge it in my brothers and my sisters and my children and my, you know, and acknowledging it, standing in it together, and then kind of figuring out, not ignoring it. And that doesn't mean looking at videos, because I haven't seen any of the videos. I haven't seen Ahmaud Arbery and I haven't seen George Floyd's, but I trust it, right? So it's just saying, like, you know, we are sad, we are grieving, and those big movements of that, but also in the smaller ones. And that goes back to the mental health conversations. How do we heal a thing that we can't name? right? So if we can just stand in it, admit what it is, and not be ashamed, and really just not be ashamed of us and ourselves in it, and you know, and stand up for the next person as well, and as they stand in their truth and in whatever that is that they need, right? So I think that there is a lot of both self-reflection and then reflection in how we move through people that might be even more marginalized than we are as well.
I'd say for me, I lean on David, educating. I am teetering on having a conversation with my sons. Right now they are 13 and 11, and I've kind of started talking even before the murder of George Floyd. I had a conversation with my son, just to make sure that he carries himself properly. I had to have that talk because he is 13 years old, but if you see him, you think he's 16 or 17. He's huge. And he doesn't really realize how big he is. And I think Constance or one of you guys said that, you know, when as black men are looked at, we are looked at as like the big bad boogeyman, right? And a child doesn't understand how they're perceived when they walk out in public. So I tried to start kind of teetering that fine line of giving him some insight about how he might be perceived, and more so speaking to him about the positive, right? You're tall, you're handsome, you carry yourself this way because people are going to be looking at you, right? And I'm starting to try to educate him, but I think David is right. We do need to educate our own people in order to survive. We need to educate them in order how to survive in this world, and how to help join this movement, because it is a movement. It's not a movement. It's a full-on movement, and it's not going to be a race. It's definitely going to be a marathon. So I think we should continue to lock arms with each other, but also lock arms with those that are trying to lock arms with us as well. Because like you said, Clyde, these millennials, they are crazy right now about what's going on. I mean, they literally will die on the street, and some of them already have. There have been people that have been out there protesting, got shot by rubber bullets, and they're dead. And they were fighting for our justice, right? And I think we need to continue to embrace them, continue to embrace our own people, and continue to walk this walk, because it's not going to be over next week just because we had a couple of protests. It's going to take a while, but I do think, and I am hopeful, that we are starting to be on the side of right, where it's going to be harder for racists, it's going to be harder for people that have hatred in their heart to hide. It's going to be harder for them to hide. And now I am starting to see more and more people calling that hatred, calling that racism and bigotry out for what it is, instead of making excuses for it.
Okay, Dr. Mayberry.
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I agree with everything that's been said, but I think that's the cart before the horse. But clearly, education and all those things are needed. One of the things that is missing, and we normally don't have this said in these talks, but we live in a society, we as African Americans live in a society that's not for us. They have not accepted us, and that is why this treatment is like this. This is just not with police, and that's why I say we don't dig deep enough. Yet we have a police brutality problem. We definitely have a healthcare problem. Oh my goodness. There are disparities that are attached with that, but there's bigotry in business, hiring practices. Everywhere we look, it's that, because this society has not accepted us. Now, contrary, the Jews got Holocaust, got reparations. The Indians, no, they got land, they got all that. We got what again? I forgot. Because the 40 acres and a mule thing, we never got. When a country or a society begins to put their money where their mouth is and say, yeah, this is a major problem. Well, the Holocaust was a major problem, and we didn't even do it. But they came over here, and if you can remember, and I did had to do a paper way back in college on this, in Southfield, all of those streets are Jewish names. Mm-hmm. And that's because that was nothing but a Jewish area. Well, it's Black now. There's a reason that it's Black, and you can chart this throughout the United States. Black people follow Jews. Followed by this, I mean, Jews couldn't sell their houses to white guys back in the day. They sold it to Black people because we would buy. But we had a hard time buying a house from a white guy because his neighbors would kill him for selling it to us, not Jews. So Southfield is all Black because a bunch of Jews sold their houses to Black folks. And it's great about Southfield is that those are homeowners, majority of them. And it was because, though, the Jews had it, their own schools, hospitals, all of that. You look at, again, Indians and the reservations that they have, all that reparations. The society made amends for those groups. They never did for African Americans. We still live in a society. This is supposed to be a Christian society. And these folks here in America actually believe Jesus was white. They're not even white people in the Bible, but they believe it. I'll never forget Megyn Kelly on TV saying everybody knows Santa Claus and Jesus is white. And it's like, you serious? I said, girl, you crazy. That's wrong. Santa's fictional and Jesus was not white. But that's what they believe. And there's a privilege that comes with religion in the country because they think he's white. But if they were made in God and God is white, then it's not their fault that we were made less than. That's the logic. So all of our social sciences, anthropology, sociology, psychology, all of those weren't created by science. They were created to prove that we were less than, that they were more inferior, or that they were inferior to us than us. So every place we can turn in this country is against us, has a problem with us, is afraid of us, is bothered by us, try to phase us out, don't want us to be a part. Everywhere we turn, we don't even in the church. So it's everywhere. And so that's why I say we put in the cart before the horse, because everything you guys said is absolutely true. We need to do all of that. That will build us stronger. But the cart before the horse is, at some point, this society has to acknowledge our issues and then put their money where their mouth is and make sure that we don't, or that we're not a part of a permanent underclass that has been created. You know, that's what has to change. So that society needs to accept us, and they haven't. Still in this country right now, a white man will get paid 40% more than me for the same job with the same education. Right now, a high school dropout that is white will make just as much, if not more money than an African-American male with a degree. That's in America. And we know this. And don't start me on how bad we've treated women, my goodness. But the Constitution was written for white men. Everybody else is just trying to get on board with it. Society hasn't accepted us. And until they accept us, we're going to still go through all this.
Thank you, Dr. Mayberry. And I know you gave us, you know, some hard truths and some tough love there. And it's all very factual, but, you know, a couple things that I stay inspired by Black people, because, you know, you really put some historical math on it. Like, we still have not been free longer than we were actually enslaved. You know, yep. We're the only minority group in America that's not here by choice. And every era we had to fight. We had to fight to get loans for houses. We had to fight to live where we want to live. Every decade is marked by all these things we had to fight in every decade. And honestly, the way I look at it, we're resilient as heck. You know, we stay here, we stay fighting. Sometimes it seems we're a little bit too divided, but I look at it as we keep progressing. You know, we inch, we claw, we crate, we scrape. You know, what is that is ours, and what is that we deserve to be treated like humans, to be treated like everybody else, to thrive, to raise our children and safe neighborhoods, to get adequate education, to help each other. I see all those goals and all those things that a large portion of us still do, and I stay inspired by that. And a lot of times I just feel as long as we, all of us in this group, as far as in this country, as individuals, as long as you keep giving the best parts of yourself to each other, all of us will continue to grow, because that's what a society is and that's what a culture is. You know, I can't give you what I ain't, but I can give you what I is, you know what I mean, to put it in neighborhood terms. And as long as I keep doing that, Lauren keeps doing that, Jacobs keeps doing that, David keeps doing that, Dr. Mayberry keeps doing that, Constance and Tamisha keep doing that, and then your children will do that. Hopefully that ultimate change we won't be as far as it looks, but the more we all keep giving those best versions and those best parts of ourselves, I do think it'll be here a lot faster than we think it will. Tamisha?
I hope so.
Me.
Well, I just want to thank everybody today for coming on. We had a lot of people viewing us on Facebook Live. I just want to thank all of my panel, my wonderful friends for coming up today. And here's the thing, this story isn't over. We're not done with this conversation. It's going to be more and more conversations. Feel free to share this, have a conversation. Look for these people if you're looking for them on Facebook. If you have questions, come to the FOG page and ask the questions and they'll be answering them. But the conversation isn't over, even though we're going to be over pretty soon. But this conversation isn't over. Continue to talk, continue to keep up with the communication and talk with your family and your friends. And I just want to thank you for tuning in to True Colors, Grieving While Being Black in America.